Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer.
Hey, welcome back, knife nerds and everyday people. It's your boy, the Big Canucker, and we're having a look at a knife today. I think kind of a little bit of a special one. Now, I understand that there is a lot of reviews out there of this knife. There's there's like a million reviews out there. Everybody has an opinion about this knife, and you know what? I just thought I would send mine out there into the ether for you guys to have a look at. We are talking about the XM-18. I just recently got this. I ended up doing a little bit of a horse trading, and I traded off a Microtech Ultratech OTF for this, and you know what? It's so far it has been an absolutely smoking knife. This is something that I wanted to get again. I ended up having one of these quite some time ago. It was an XM-18, but it was the skinny variation. I do believe it was the Spanto, and I just didn't like it. I mean, I actually preferred the ZT over my old Hinderer skinny. Now you can see here that this is the ZT right here. This is the ZT-0562. I ended up dyeing this scale, this micarta scale red, and I just kind of give it a little bit of a pizzazz. But you can see that there is some real similarities between these two. This is a Hinderer designed, and there was a time when people would say that the ZT-0562 was a better Hinderer than this Hinderer. I think those times are long gone. Now, the first thing I wanted to tell you about the Hinderer is the very first Hinderer that I had. I actually was this one here. This one here is the Eclipse, and it was the very first. Now, I had kind of started off collecting more and more and more, and this was not my first expensive knife. My first expensive knife was a Chris Reeves Umnumzon that my wife got me, actually, and I love her dearly for it. But the Umnumzon was a good knife. It was a nice knife. I just didn't completely blow my socks off. But when I got this one, I ended up getting this one off of Kijiji. I bought it from a guy in Edmonton, and he shipped it out, and it was, I have to say, the first time that I picked up a knife that's an expensive knife, and I thought to myself, I can see where this is costs, $425 American, or in Canada, I think it was $550. I didn't pay $550 for it. I paid, I think, $475 for this one. And it's the first time that I had an expensive knife that I thought, oh, I can see where that money is going from. And it's, you know what, it's drop shot. And I love this. I absolutely loved it. So that was my first Hinderer. I ended up getting, of course, after this Hinderer, I got an XM-18 skinny in the micarta skinny, and I just didn't like it. I did not like it a bit. But since then, I've collected a few other Hinderers. We've got the Eclipse. I've got a big old giant XM-24, which I absolutely love. I've got some crazy glue on the blade that I got to get off. It's kind of driving me a little bit crazy. And I have the kind of in-between model between this and this is the Hinderer Jurassic, which is in MagnaCut, and I've been carrying this, so you can see that it's pretty dirty. I need to clean it all up. Dyed this fat carbon white scale. I didn't really like it. It was black and white, and I fooled around with some blue and red and kind of had a purple hair, so I'm going to have to smooth this one out here. I've got some for this Jurassic. I just don't, it's just not as drop shutty as the rest of them. Like, it flips open like a devil, but it's all three of these are completely drop shut. This one's not. I happen to think it's because it's the finish. It's got some crazy acid washed finish, and in the tang inside there, it's not polished up. And I think that might be it. Or my other thought is that it's this this bar here. This lock bar's got quite a bit more tension than these, and I don't want to mess around with lock bar tension. So that kind of is my thought on that, why that's not as drop shutty. All right. So let's put these two away here, and let's concentrate on this XM-18, and we'll give it just another quick size comparison. This happens to be the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and you can see that they're very similar type of dimensions. The PM2's got quite a much bigger handle to blade ratio, where the XM-18 has got that, I think, look, I was trying to close that like an XM-18 there. I've been carrying that so much. But it's just got a much more satisfying handle to blade ratio to the eye. Now, the hand may tell a different story because the PM2 is one of those everyday carry Hall of Fame knives, and this one is too. I think this is a hard use butte, absolutely. So this one here happens to be the Recurve. It happens to be double titanium, but it didn't come that way. It's got a 3.5-inch blade with a nice big sharpening choil in it, or some people call it a finger choil, but I gotta say, you gotta be very careful with that, because if I got big kind of fat fingers and I got this so lightsaber sharp that if I kind of tick that, I'm gonna put a cut in there quite a bit. So I would, if I'm gonna use that as a finger choil, I'm gonna use it as kind of a point, the pointy part of my finger rather than the meat of it, because I would end up kind of cutting it. Now the handle length is 4.75 inches, with the overall length being 8.25. Now the blade thickness there is 165 thousandths, and it's a thick blade. Now the 165, I think that's somewhere around 4 mils. And you can see here, the one thing I really like about this is the fact that it gets a little bit thicker towards the tip. Now, I know that you are not supposed to use knives as pry bars, and I never do. And I've actually got a nice pry bar on the way. But if you have to do any sort of penetration with this, whether it's, if you want to, stab a car door, if you would like to go through some drywall or into some plywood, kind of cut your way out of a a room with a bunch of plywood, you can see that something like this, where this one has a distal taper all the way to the end, where it's a very fine tip. You can see that you've got that extra bit of meat here on the Hinderer, and I really like that. That's kind of a sign of some real heavy, hard use that I really enjoy. Now, this one here didn't start off as kind of a dual titanium. This one here started off, it had, right here, it had, and I think they're just goofy as hell. It came with Battle Blue, and it came with the skinny titanium liner, but it was orange. I mean, that is, I guess, if you want to go with the color, I guess that is a color you can go with, but it wouldn't be my first choice. I think this knife looks way better with the dual titanium, titanium liners. It's fantastic. All right, overall handle thickness here is, you're looking at liner thickness here, we got 0.05 inches. Overall handle thickness is 0.54 inches, which is just a little over half an inch. I don't think they're taking into account this clip. Now the handle material here, this is G10, but this one happens to be the aftermarket Hinderer titanium, and you can see that they're even. When they put the G10 liner on there, they've got a really kind of thin, they've got a thin liner that you kind of put on there with the G10. So the two of them together are the same width. And I always thought it kind of was a little bit, you can see that the titanium was a little bit different here. Sometimes it bothered me. After a little bit carrying it, I never noticed it at all, that this titanium is so much thinner and you've got the G10 on top. It just, to my OCD, it bothered it at first, but after I started carrying these and I realized how great a knife it was, it didn't bother me one bit at all. Just having myself a little bit of coffee. Now, of course, the overall weight here is 5.6 ounces, and you've got, kind of the super steel that's been going on for a bit, CPM 20 CV. Now, I didn't realize that this, CPM 20 CV, the M390, 204P, they're all very similar, just different kind of manufacturers. I didn't realize that steel has been around for, 25 plus years. I thought it was kind of a relatively new thing, but you know what? Hey, you read stuff on the internet, you do a little bit of research, and you find out, hey man, I learned something today. And it's not a bad day if you learn something every day. Now this one here happens to have kind of just a stonewash blade. You've got like all sorts of crazy finishes that you can put on here. Like there's the battle finish, there's the working finish. There's all sorts of crazy finishes that they put on these knives, as well as all sorts of different blade shapes. This one happens to be the Recurve, but you can get it into like a spanto. You can get it into a spear point. You can get it into a Bowie, and that's something that I would love to have, is an XM-18 Bowie. I think it just looks fantastic. I love the look of that Bowie, and I love the look of the XM24 in the Bowie too. Just a little off topic, but you can get a tremendous amount of variations on this knife. And you know what? once you start kind of adding to it, so this one here also has aftermarket, and I think these are the bronze kind of hardware, because the original hardware was just kind of a chrome or like a nickel polish hardware on it, including the standoffs here. We've got a bronze, so you can customize these in all sorts of crazy ways. You can have different standoffs. You can get like a different pivot. You can get different little spacers inside here. You can get different clips. You can get little a spacer in the back here where you can. I can't remember exactly what that's called, but you can get kind of a liner in there, or you can get like a bottle opener or a little pry bar. It's got all sorts of crazy things you can get for the XM-18, as well as the XM-24 and the Jurassic. I just think it's pretty neat. Now, the other real kind of claim to fame of this knife is it's got what's called the tri-way pivot. And I have not ever tried this knife on washers, because you can put phosphor bronze washers in here, or you could put nylon. And I've never tried it. I've always had these on bearings, and I just like to see, you can see that they're absolutely drop shut. They're smooth as can be. I guess you'd probably want to, if you're working in, say, kind of a hard, dirty area, your bearings can get plugged up quite a bit if it's quite dusty. So you might want to go with the phosphor bronze. And then if you're going to go to, say, something that's you're not able to maintain your knife, that it's going to be a very, very long time, then you might want to go with the nylon washers. Now, the nice thing about the nylon washers is they are kind of self-lubricating. You don't need to have as much lubrication. So if it dries out a little bit, you're still going to have tremendous action on this with the nylon. Now, if you're in dust areas, they're going to wear faster than the phosphor bronze, but they're going to not need the maintenance that, say, the bearings would need, or even the phosphor bronze. The nylons are totally self-lubricating. So I think that's fantastic. Now, the other thing about this, now I did not like my previous XM-18, and I think a big part of the reason was the jimping on this thin liner. So mine happened to be, it had this really super sharp jimping. Now this jimping here on certain parts of this knife is quite a bit, it can be wearing on the finger. Like if you're like a constant flicker like I am, my landing spot on this jimping on the skinny that I had used to drive my finger crazy, because I would constantly flick. That was kind of my whole deal, is I loved flicking this knife over and over and over again. And the other thing is that this flipper tab shape is not near as good as this one. As you can see here, it's generally the same shape, but this one here is a little bit more rounded, and there's not any jimping on it, and it's so much pleasing to the finger. Where this one here, if you hit it just wrong, it digs into your finger and it hurts like a bitch, and I hate it. So what I've ended up doing is instead of pressing on that corner, I put my finger in there, and then it kind of cups my finger. And it does another thing too, is when I open it up and it cups, my finger goes past that. So I don't really land on the jimping. And this jimping here is so much better than that skinny. This jimping is kind of aggressive, but it's not near as aggressive. It's been chamfered quite a bit better. And I don't know if that's something that's Hinderer has done over time, because that skinny was quite a bit older knife. This one here is a 35th anniversary, so it's built in 2022. That other one would have been probably 2017, 2018. So the jimping was so much more aggressive on there. And it looked like they were the same size, but it didn't look like it was chamfered near as well. And it cut the hell out of my fingers, and I disliked it immensely. Now, over on to some other things here. Overall ergonomics on this is fantastic. I think that it's great. Even with this smooth side. Now, I love smooth, very smooth scales. I don't need to have a pattern on there. Sometimes for looks, it looks better, but I like the smoothness. That's kind of my little bit of a, I don't say if a knife kink or whatever, but when you put this in your hand, I've never felt like I had any worry about this coming out of my hand. It locks in really well. Especially me, I've got big double XL size hands, and I get a little bit worried sometimes when you've got little pointy chorals like that. If they don't fit your hands kind of go right on top of them, and it creates a hot spot, and it's uncomfortable. But this one seems to fit my hands quite well. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. Now, you could also choke up on this, and it gives you a really nice grip on it that way. If you have to do some fine work, I wouldn't, I don't mess around ever really with kind of reverse grip on it. Not near as comfortable, but I mean, it is doable. But I never really ever kind of mess around with that at all. Now, let's just see here. Now, there are some other kind of a little bit picadillos that are just a little bit kind of weird about this knife. Now, it's been around for a long time. I think 35 years. And in that 35 years, you can, I don't know if you can go right back to the very first year, but I know that in the last recent history, you can exchange these, all the hardware will fit with all other iterations of this knife. So if I wanted to take this this bronze hardware and put it in my new XM-18 that's coming down the road, I can. No problem. It would fit perfectly. All the stuff here, all the hardware here is machined in-house at Hinderer. So he's got, constant control over his quality, and he does it the same way for the last, umpteen years. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, conversely, you've got some other things that are a little bit kind of piss you off about this hardware. The first thing is you've got yourself a really weird amount of screws on here. You've got a straight here, you've got Torx here, T8, and then you've got some Phillips right here, and then you've got this one here where you need kind of an armorer's tool. I don't ever use an armorer's tool with that. You can use, I've heard other reviewers say you can just take a notch and a penny and stuff like that. The other thing that I have done on a lot of my XM8 or on my Hinderers is I've just really kind of pressed my thumb into it quite hard, and it may not work to take it off, but I know that if I wanted to adjust this blade, if I've got a little bit of slop in it and I want to tighten it up a little bit, just pressing my thumb real tight and taking a penny and giving it a little bit of a crank, no problem. It's tightened it up or loosened it up. I've been able to adjust it with just my thumb and a penny. Now, to take it right apart, if I've needed to, I ended up getting these here, these little things here. They're called finger bits, and I got them from the Skiff workshop, and I think they're fantastic. This is what I used to adjust my Hinderers all the time. And I've got a couple little bits on there, just a flat bit, and I've got the little spanner bit. Now, what I've done with these is I used to kind of tape these, but I kind of got a little sick of taping them because the tape would just come off, because you don't want to scratch this stuff. So what I ended up doing is I just took some Extra Life No Chip top coat from my wife. I stole it from her, and I just paint on here, and it puts a little bit of a coating on both of these. And it doesn't last, it's not going to last me the next 10 years, but it's quite a big bottle. And if I'm painting these bits every, month or so, it's going to last me for a long time. And that's all I've done is I've just used them to kind of get into there, because you don't want to mar up your bits. I mean, it's an expensive knife, and you just don't want to mar it up. And it just kind of fits over top of that little center post, and then Bob's your uncle, you can do your adjustments. So these little finger bits, I will leave a link in the description there to have a look at the Skiff workshop, where the Skiff bearings come from, Skiff knives. If you want to use a little bit of a code, it's called, you can use my code. It's called TBC for the Big Canucker, and you can save yourself 10% on this and bearings and all sorts of things over there. But just look for that description and that link in the description. All right, so let's put these away. These are cool. I'm going to do a review on these, but I really like them. Okay. Now, knowing now, I've been a collector for quite a few years. This overall design is a little bit long in the tooth. And I still think it's very, very relevant today. It's expensive. These start at $425 with a G10. But the other thing that, before I kind of go in there, the other thing that drives me crazy is this stuff, scales, backspacers, most of the time these are available, but there's a lot of stuff that's not available or sold out at the workshop. So if you want to customize your knife and you want to head into Hinderer and get your genuine Hinderer parts and all that stuff sells out so fast. And I know you can only increase so much production, but I wish that he would, and hire maybe some other kind of guys that are close to him that maybe will just make these and machine these, so he can, that's it. You get, maybe a vendor that's close to you in the same city, somebody who's just going to make yourself your standoffs and all your hardware for you, and then maybe I'll keep a little bit more in stock. That just kind of is my bugaboo about some of this Hinderer stuff. All right, now, would I recommend this? I think absolutely. I think this is still a relevant design. I think it's still extremely hard working knife. I absolutely love it. It is becoming one of my favorite brands of all time. So I want to get myself a couple other Hinderers. I want to get myself a full track, and I want to get myself a Project X. And I know, they're expensive in their own rights. I mean, they're all over $500 here Canadian once you include tax, shipping, and the exchange. But I mean, eventually, it's just going to happen over time. I've still got some old knives in my collection that I might kind of trade when I come across them. And that's mostly how I kind of get this stuff, is through trades or selling stuff to purchase this stuff, because they are expensive. Now, but would I recommend the XM-18? I think so. I absolutely love this XM-18. I really like it in the Recurve. I heard some not great things about the Recurve off the bat, and when I first got it, it was not a very good cutter. I mean, Hinderers are they're thick and chunky, and they're thick behind the edge, and they're not like super slicers. Even the slicer ground is not a crazy super slicer. But I think part of the problem with this Recurve, and part of the problem with the reputation that the Recurve has, is the fact that it had such an obtuse angle from the factory. And I don't blame them. I mean, if you're sitting there sharpening these, and the one thing is, when you start talking about Recurves, your angle, or factory sharpening, you want to make sure that your bevel is the same all the way throughout. And you can see that here, it is pretty darn close. It gets a tiny bit thicker towards the end, but that's just the way it was kind of set up to sharpen. And I can see how you can see it gets a little bit thicker there and a little bit thicker towards the end. But that's just the nature of having a Recurve. So once I laid this back to 20 degrees, it cuts way better. I mean, through cardboard with this, like, it's sharp. I mean, I've got the new Work Sharp Precision Adjust, and I gotta say, it has been knocking it out of the park on the knives that I've sharpened, including this one. So once I kind of laid this angle back a little bit, because I'm not sure what it had been sharpened at. It had just a tiny sharpening bevel. I'm going to say maybe even 30 degrees. It was like pushing a 2x4 through the cardboard, whereas now she whisked through there pretty darn quietly, and it's fantastic. So would I kind of recommend this? I think absolutely. I think if you're a serious knife collector, you got to put at least one Hinderer in your collection, whether it's the XM-18, where it's the 24, or the any of the other iterations. But the XM-18 is classic. It's still relevant. It's got up-to-date modern materials on it, and the design is still kicking some ass. Whether you've got your pair of gloves on, you're barehanded, I think it's fantastic. So I definitely would recommend it, and this is fast becoming one of my favorite knives that I'm going to carry in my pocket. So thanks so much for stopping by. You know what? I do appreciate you guys out there. I'm sure there's things that I forgot to mention. The clip, it's got the over travel stop. It's got the lock bar insert. It's got, it's tip up, tip down carry on the right-hand side. So, yeah, so I quickly mentioned them. I love this. I know a lot of people don't like this. I love it. So I just thought I'd quickly mention those things, so I kind of hit all the things that were in my mind. But please stay safe out there. Please keep your stick on the ice, the shiny side up. This is the Big Canucker saying adios.